Hello, my name is Melody Castillo, and I'm going to be discussing Plato's Allegory of the Cave. He wrote this in the book The Republic, and he basically realizes that humankind can think, speak, etc. without having actual knowledge of reality and what's actually there, what would be there if we had perfect knowledge of the forms. And the Allegory of the Cave explains this. The Allegory of the Cave starts out with it's an underground cave where there's prisoners, a puppeteer, and then a fire. So the prisoners are chained, their arms are chained, legs are chained, and they're facing a wall. They can't look back, they can't look around, they can't get up, and all they have of life is what's in front of them, which is a wall, and whatever is shown on the wall. So behind them there's a puppeteer, which they don't know is there because they can't see them, and the puppeteer shows things like vases and other objects. And then behind the puppeteer there's a symbol of light. So in the story it's a fire. And the fire, obviously, since it's the form of light, it puts the objects or the forms onto the wall so that they can see them. But the people can't see, or the prisoners can't see that there's a fire behind them. They can't see any of that. They're just like, okay, what's in front of me, that's what life is. And eventually they start naming what they see on the wall, putting names to them so they can recognize them. They would think the shadow is an actual thing. Mind you, they can't touch the wall or anything to see oh, okay, this is just a wall. This is something weird. This is not an actual thing. But they couldn't do that. So they were okay, this is a real thing. That, whatever that's on the wall, that's a book. So that's an actual book. Because in order to see those things, the actual things, they would have to turn around, and they can't do that. They've never been able to do that, so what they see on the wall is just okay, that's real. They also are a representation of the imagination, not of fact, reason, logic, knowledge, education in general. Everything is from their imagination. What they're saying is on the wall is coming from their imagination, not actual things. They say okay, that when we see this form, it's going to be a tree, or when we see this form of a tree, they're going to say it's a book or something. They're just going to put whatever comes to mind on the object. Eventually, one of the prisoners escapes the cave. They find a way to escape, and immediately as soon as they turn around, they see the fire, and they're immediately blinded because they've never seen light before. They've never, in a more metaphorical way, it would be they've never been enlightened before. They never knew education or knowledge or anything. And so after an initial period of pain and confusion, because of the exposure of the fire in his eyes, because he's never seen a hint of light before, just darkness, the prisoner realizes that things are more real than the shadows he has always taken to reality. He realized, he's okay, things are actually real. He kind of puts two and two together, okay, the fire or the form of light is making the object appear on the wall as a shadow. And then he noticed that when he leaves as well, when he sees an actual tree, and then he looks on the ground and sees the shadow of the tree, and he's okay, clearly the tree, the object is real, the shadow, what's on the ground, is not real. And he accepts the statues and the fire as the most real things in the world than the shadows, because shadows are not real. They're just representations of the real thing. This stage, when he's realizing all of this stuff, there's actually real things, that stage is belief. It's not enlightenment, because at that point he's just realizing okay, there's things that are more real than the shadows. But he's not aware that there are things of greater reality. There's things bigger than just a little vase, which is a world beyond the cave, and he's not at that stage yet, which is why it's just the belief stage. So his journey out of the cave is his path to enlightenment, and when he steps out of the cave, it's enlightenment. When he comes out, he realizes he sees other things like houses, cars, whatever it is, more than just little statues that were in the cave. There's bigger, grander things. He sees that these are even more real than the statues were, and that those were only copies of these. He has now reached the cognitive state of thought, and has caught his first glimpse of more real things. And these more real things are what Plato describes as the forms. And so when the prisoner's eyes have fully adjusted to the brightness, he lifts his eyesight towards the heavens and looks at the sun. He understands that the sun is the cause of everything he sees around him, the light, his capacity for sight, the existence of flowers, trees, and other objects. The sun represents the form of the good. And the goal of education is to drag every man as far out of the cave as possible, because everyone is still stuck in the cave. Society, government officials, even the puppeteers, they're still stuck in the cage. Don't want the people to see reality and see their power taken away from them, if you want to go there. So when the prisoner comes back and he's like, guys, like, this is all fake, like, come on, like, we have to leave, you guys have to leave so you can see what's actually real. They're like, no, like, this is real, you're crazy, like, I don't know what you're on, but, like, you're crazy, and we're just gonna stay here because we're not, like, dealing with that. And also when the prisoner who escaped, he goes back in, they ask him, they're like, okay, so, like, what's that on the wall? And he can't see it because he's so used to seeing the light. He's like, when he goes back into the dark now, he's just like, he can't adjust to it well, like when he adjusted to the light. So the path out of the cave is education and knowledge. And education should not aim at putting knowledge into the soul, but at turning the soul towards the right desires. The path is difficult. It's a painful one. It's not easy, and that's why so many people don't desire to take it, and they'd rather just stay in their own bubbles, if you want to say, or stay in their own beliefs, and they don't want to look for anything else because it's too difficult and they don't have the desire. Once you do have the desire to learn and desire to realize that what the meaning of everything actually is, then you're more willing to learn, you're more open to the idea, you're more willing to go and seek it. Whereas if you don't have the desire to seek it, you're just going to stay in your own bubble, and that's the people in society. And the puppeteers are the people who cause that to happen, because they're the ones creating all these opinions for people to have, and not allowing them to kind of doubt them, and not allowing them to seek knowledge, like deeper and higher knowledge. And Socrates explains that the vision of a clever, wicked man might just be as sharp as that of a philosopher. And the problem lies in what he turns his sharp vision towards. Society in itself is very smart, wicked, evil. They can manipulate people with the opinions that they create. Even though they're just as smart as the philosopher, they use their knowledge for bad, I guess. I think that's what Socrates was trying to explain. Whether he wants to do it for good, for turning society into this highly, highly intellectual society, or just turn it into this wicked, evil world where they form everything in society, like how people believe, what people believe in and stuff. Whereas the philosopher wants to turn it into good, for everyone to seek enlightenment. Once they have done this, they cannot remain contemplating the form of good forever. They must return periodically into the cave and rule there. They need periodically to turn away from the forms to return to the shadows to help other prisoners. So the people who leave the cave and seek the highest of good, they still need to come back down to enlighten other people and to help them seek their own. Even though people can be so stuck in their ways, they still need to come back and do that and show other people that there's more than just a shadow, that shadows aren't actually reality. Even if they call you crazy, like, you don't know what you're talking about, this is what they show us. The government, society shows us, and they're very smart, so why shouldn't we believe them, you know? But no, they are very smart, but they use their cleverness for bad. So the whole meaning of the allegory of the cave is to illustrate the effects of education and the human soul. So when one becomes more educated in, let's say, like philosophy, they are a lot more enlightened, and when they try to explain this to other people, the other people are just kind of like they don't have the desire to learn that. And those people would be a representation of society. And the puppeteers, as shown in the cave, would be like the government, the media, and whatnot. They're the ones creating opinions for people. And these opinions are like harmful to society, because it blocks their ability to learn and to grasp new ideas and the idea of life as in its entirety. And it shows how important education is, so that people can kind of, I guess, wake up. So yeah, that is the allegory of the cave, and to me it represents someone who's represented by the prisoner seeking the ultimate, the absolute truth at all times, which would be a philosopher, it could be a spiritual guru, however you want to look at it. So that's what I got when I was reading it, and I think that's what Plato was trying to depict, and kind of like the struggles like they go through. So yeah, that's the allegory of the cave.